Happy Wednesday, everybody. Appreciate JerzWay for giving the opportunity. And if you're not following JerzWay, you need to follow him on his YouTube channel, follow him on the Twitter channel, giving out great picks. Had a good end of the year. I think to baseball, I kind of saw that. So congrats to JerzWay. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate, again, this opportunity, and appreciate that we get an actually decent field starting tomorrow for the Mayakoba Championship. It's not the name, whatever it is, the classic, whatever, don't care. But we got golf and we got a good field starting tomorrow. Thankful for the opportunity. Unfortunately, no shot tracer this weekend. Again, that having kind of withdrawals. What another sad thing is that after this weekend, we only get 2 real tournaments left before a pretty big break. We have the Houston Open and we have the RSM Classic. Those are the only tournaments left until Kapalua. Yeah, you have the Hero World Challenge, which doesn't really count. It's not a real tournament. They only have like 30-something guys in it. You have the QBE Shootout, which I think is a team event. That doesn't really count. So only real 2 tournaments left till Kapalua. So let's take advantage of it. And I'm getting stuff here because what I'm going to do now, I'm going to kind of run through some ownership. And so I'm going to share my screen and just share what FanShare has cooking a little bit. Let's just share with that. There we go. All right. Well, hopefully you can see. So this is FanShare's dashboard looking at ownership, which is right here. And speaking of which, JT, Justin Thomas, ownership is kind of spiking up a little bit. It was 18%, 20 right now. Not awful for the type of guy that JT is, how he's coming into it. If you look right here, he ranks first in course suitability ranking. Not a lot of people are talking about it. Not a lot of people think that, gosh, JT, this is a course fit, but suitability ranks number 1. Obviously, Victor, going to be highly owned, 22. Abraham Answer, likely the highest owned guy, 26 for rounding up. Finau is surprising. This is very surprising. And these ownership numbers may be updated one more time, I think, this evening by Mike, who does a great job. But 15% on Tony, that's pretty surprising for me, at least. I wouldn't have expected that. What's also pretty surprising is Hatton's only at 8%, just kicked it in the night mode now. Hatton's only at 8%, which is surprising because I saw a lot of people on Hatton in their cards. Billy Horschel, outright cards. Billy Horschel, Billy Ho, coming up to close to 14. He's at 13%. Brooks picking up some steam. Interesting. Kind of disappointed Scotty got almost 4 points in ownership. I loved him at single digits. Still kind of like the guy. But if I check back this evening and he jumps 4 points up, I'm going to be less on Scotty. I think I sent out my pyramid pool player share, and he was, I believe, or want to say, third. And one of my highest owned guys. So also really bummed that Aaron Wise right here is losing ownership. I wanted to fade Aaron Wise, still am, but it was easier to fade him when he was almost at 18% owned. Reed's number kind of dropping. Lowry's going up. Wolf, I love it, staying right there. That's where it should be. Willie Z, I expected that to come up. Gooch, you know how I feel about Gooch, hitting the ball, some of the best in the field. Getting up to almost 14%. That's a little too much Gooch for me, if you know what I mean. It's going to come down. Shingali, Fitzpatrick, that's super surprising. He let down as some chalk last week, so a little surprising. Sergio's hasn't moved much. That's great. Ricky at 8. Mav almost at 13. That's surprising. Not touching that. Henley at 22. Yeah, this is what I want to get in this range. The 22 and the 19 for Mito. 22 is a lot for Russell Henley. It's a whole lot. I still have a lot of them. I think it was 15%. But if that keeps creeping up, it's going to be hard to play him. Just like with Answer, who's the highest owned guy, not playing him. I think that's bad chalk. Not that I'm betting against. I wouldn't bet against Answer in matchups or anything like that. Obviously, he models out well for this course. He's a great player. But just as a DFS play, what benefit are you getting when you bite on that 28% ownership or 26, whatever he is, whatever he's going to be? What's the edge there? A lot more in golf can go wrong than can go right. And so with that said, it's risky taking on someone with that ownership, unless you love them. Like JT, hard not to like that, but I'm taking on that ownership. I'm going overweight. The field has him at 20%. I'm going overweight. I own about 60% of JT out of 125 lineup. So just some things to consider. Woodland, let's see, let's match this up. This is going down. Woodland at, wow, that's Charlie Hoffman. What am I doing here? And this is way kind of funky. I need to figure this out. Bear with me. Well, it just got logged out. Well, I'm going to stop sharing then and come back just to the screen and maybe go over some strokes gain data. But you got the gist. You got what we saw. But I do want to talk about Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland is one of my favorite plays and still coming in at pretty low ownership. I wrote Gary Woodland up on the Game 3 blog because he's in that single-digit ownership. And big shout out, been trying to shout him out all week. PGA Tout kind of diving into the stats and understanding of, okay, when driving accuracy is so important, but you don't need driver off the tee, what does that do? And Gary Woodland looks or could be a guy that benefits from that. We know he has a great stinger, can smash the 3-wood. He's kind of wayward with the driver. And so if he doesn't have to hit driver that much on this course, you get Gary Woodland, more opportunities in the fairway. Sign me up, and specifically sign me up for his single-digit ownerships with his price. I just love that. Yeah, and could he flop? Sure. I mean, he's Gary Woodland. He flops all the time. Carlos Ortiz is – I kind of wish I put an outright on him. I'm here in Kentucky. Outright's not legal, so I have to drive to Indiana, which is about 15 minutes away. Not that big a deal, but I can't – I'm not going over there every day. So I would have put a bet on Carlos Ortiz, but he is now likely going to be the third highest owned guy in my player pool. I love him. He's consistent across the board. I really appreciate how he's trending with the ball striking. He's playing really well this fall. Let's dive into how well he's playing. CJ Cup, where he finished 25th, and we're not, that's not going to blow anybody away, but gained 4.6 on approach. That's not what we usually see with Ortiz. Yeah, he's a great ball striker and usually gains, like over the last 20 rounds, he gains on strokes on approach. Last 10 he has. But what really is Ortiz's bread and butter is the tee to green game, which includes, we know, kind of approach, but he's been hitting it really well on approach. 4.6 at the CJ, hasn't lost strokes gained on approach since the Northern Trust, and before that hasn't lost it since May at the PGA. Really like Carlos Ortiz. We know what Ortiz struggles with, and that's the putting. But if you get him, we kind of been saying it all week, you get on this paspalum, and don't at me, Mike, from the cut line. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I think so. But that tends to run slower than an average tour event. So like on Bermuda and Poa, it tends to run a little bit slower. And if you get slower greens, usually that helps poor putters. Slower green helps poor putters. So if he's a poor putter and he gets a little bit of an advantage, I shouldn't say advantage, his awful putting gets maybe negated a little bit with these greens, sign me up, because he can ball strike it. I really like that. The whole Mexico narrative, whatever, you can kind of buy into that if you want. So I'm really vibing with Ortiz right now. I really like him. Another guy who's hitting it really, really well, and just above him is Seamus Power. He's getting more and more steam with ownership. But the majority of this show, I want to talk about the guys, let me see, 7,500 or below. Every single content provider out there can kind of beat us up with 75 and above salary range. So you hear that all week. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. You know that Hovland's a good play. You know who Brooks Koepka is and Scotty Scheffler. So I'm not going to spend too much time in there. But when you get into a little bit of these, they're great players because they're on the PGA Tour, but comparative to the top tier guys, lesser tier, well, that's what we can make our bread and butter. So Varner, great course history, course fit. We know that. And kind of coming in pretty well. So I really like Varner. Shout out to him. Just became a father. He's got that dad strength. Sign me up for a guy with course history, coming in well, course fit, and then some dad strength. I really, really like that. Not on Rogers. Vegas models out every single tournament. But a guy I really wanted to talk about is Adam Hadwin. So Adam Hadwin was chalk last week, had a terrible Thursday in the wind in Bermuda, and then brought it all the way back. I think he had a great Saturday where he was 7 under or something like that. So really like Adam Hadwin at lower ownership. I think he could be a sneaky play, and definitely we get a price discount. We get an ownership, a massive ownership discount on Adam Hadwin. So I'm definitely going back to him. Going back to a guy like Knox, similar to Hadwin last week. Chalk, they let some people down. Go back to him. Russell Knox is a course fit. I think Russell Knox ranks 5th or in the top 5. Yes, he ranks 2nd in course sustainability ranking on Fanshare. That's great. So he's right behind JT in that ranking. Love that. 7,300, not too bad of ownership. I think he was 12, so not too bad. But if you saw him on Twitter, the guy I really, really love, and that's Matt Kuchar. And he's very single-digit ownership, coming in at less than 5%. So you get less than 5% Matt Kuchar. I love it, especially if you're going to go severely overweight on him, which I am. And if you look at models, he's going to model out one of the worst in the field. In my model, with just some key stats, over the last 24 rounds, he ranks 107. So not good at all. And ball striking ranks 113. Just awful, just bad. And I think a lot of people are going to see that, and that's why his ownership is so low, and it is what it is. But if you zoom out and look at more context with how well Kuchar has been playing recently versus how bad he's been playing in these last couple months, there's something to note, and that's just with the trend perspective. So I said it, I think last night, or maybe it was Monday night, but one thing we look for at trend progression is not just who's been 5th in ball striking stats over the last 12, who's been 3rd and 1. Yeah, that's helpful. But also guys who are making giant leaps, because if that trend continues, you can get somebody either on a ceiling type tournament, or they could be peaking to a ceiling type performance. And so Matt Kuchar is one of those guys who maybe ranks like 80th in the field over the last 50. Maybe he's 78 over the last 24, which isn't great. But then he goes to 40, and then he goes to 18. And those are really big leaps. And it makes sense. We're seeing some life out of Matt Kuchar at the Shriners, gained 3.3 on approach. He hasn't done that, gained that much on approach since the U.S. Open in September of 2020. Yeah, he's gained a little bit of strokes, here and there throughout last year. Gained 1.4 at the Wyndham, 0.7 at the 3M Open, 2.3 the RBC, which is that's a course fit for him. But a 3.3 is one of his largest in a long time. That gives me a little hope that we can kind of buy in or possibly get a trending upward to a peak performance from Matt Kuchar. And is it likely? No. But at 5%, I'm willing to invest a lot to get that leverage. We also have the course history. He's won here. We know that. It's a course fit. Let me see what his course suitability ranking is, if I can pull that up. Oh, the ownership's all over because I'm looking at the wrong thing. Oh, well, it's good. It's good. Just trust me with that. And so, yeah, he's making some giant leaps. That shows maybe he's improving. He's getting back to his back class, and he's a risky play. What did even bet him? Did I bet him? I can't even remember now. It's been a long day. That's going to bother the hell out of me if I didn't bet him. Yeah, I didn't think I bet him. He's a terrible bet, but he's a great DFS play because of this massive leverage. And when you kind of get little glimpses of possible, we'll say, trending into a peak performance. And I don't think he's going to peak this week, but if we get him on an upswing when he's this low priced and he's this low owned, that's all we really need. And again, just like I said with Answer, more can go wrong than right. So why not invest on guys that give you massive leverage? And obviously, if you're comparing Matt Kuchar and Abraham Answer, I would not bet Kuchar in a matchup versus Answer. But we get different variables with ownership and salary. So right where he's at, I think he's a great play. And I'm going to risk. If I'm wrong, I'll know Thursday if I'm wrong, and he might miss the cut. But if he is top 15 or 20 on Sunday, and if he's less than 5% owned, and I have 25% shares of him, well, look out. That is the type of stuff. And again, if you get 66 and the 5 other guys are going well, that's the type of stuff that wins you GPPs. So Kuchar GPP winner. We'll see. Not predicting it, but opportunity. Pendrith, if you want to go back to him, I'm not going back to Pendrith. I was on him last week. Was on him last week, didn't happen. Luke List, similar to Ortiz, in the sense of he's a terrible putter, but you get on slower greens, maybe that neutralizes his bad putting. Luke List ranks 9th in the model over the last 24 rounds. He's 6th in green regulation, gained. He's 11th in ball striking, 25th on approach. He's 7,100. He's not highly owned. People hate playing Luke List. I hate playing Luke List. The most frustrating thing with Luke List is he could have, let's pretend he has a great Thursday, and he's 5 under after Thursday, and he's in 15th place. Then come Friday afternoon, and you have a cut split with him. He's 2 over, and he has 3 holes left, and he just needs to shoot even par, and he 3 putts, 3 putts, 3 putts. That's Luke List, and Luke List will give you a heart attack. DFSers know all about Luke List. But I like him this week. Damon's really interesting. He's kind of popular for that range. Scott Stallings, if you watch that final round on Sunday, Scott Stallings played lights out. In that wind, in those conditions, to shoot what he shot, incredible. I think it was it 9 or 10 under? I don't think it was that much, but it was something wild. So, he could be riding that in. He could bounce something on the range, as they say. Danny Lee is very, very interesting. Danny Lee ranks in the top 5 in the most birdies scored on this course. Very surprising. Kuchar's up there too. But Danny Lee, over the course, I can't remember how many events or how many tournaments he's played here, but he's in the top 5 in total birdies. Birdies are better, I think, is the actual statistic. So props to Danny Lee. When we saw life of Danny Lee said last week in the middle of the tournament that he's finally fully healthy again. Played really well last week. And even without last week's strokes gain data, Danny Lee ranks pretty well on some statistics we want to see. Big greens this week. So what do we need to do? We need to have good proximity numbers. Danny Lee ranks 17th over the last 24 rounds in proximity. Ranks 18th in green regulations gained. And a guy's going to be low owned. But again, top 5 and birdies are better throughout the course history here. I ended up buying more shares of Danny Lee after I tweeted out my pyramid. So FYI, Keith Mitchell, I did have some ownership of him, went off him because I wanted to add more Danny Lee and Keith Mitchell. Killer Keith got the axe, not on him. Aaron Rye is a guy that got the axe, originally wanted him, but you had to shrink the player pool. Sabatini's very interesting. Higo is very, very interesting. Played really, really well last week. If he would have won, or if it would have finished Pendrith Higo last week, would have made a ton of money. DFS. I had so many lineups with them and a lot of sixes with Reed too. Gosh, it would have been so nice. But I like how he played, coming into it kind of decently well. Dietrich is also interesting. Young stud, Euro Tour guy. Chez, course history, models out well. Been playing kind of well, except for I think it was the Zozo or CJ, whatever. Got to go back to Chez. He's kind of popular for this range in 6,600. Jimmy Walker, I think, just shot a 60 last weekend with his buddies. But surprisingly, is seeing some return to form. He's hitting it well on approach over the last 24, but starting to get better with off the tee numbers. We know with Uncle Jimmy what happened to him, Mr. Lyme disease, and he's kind of getting over it. I hope, as over a year ago now, but it takes a while to recover from that. Major champion, Jimmy Walker, major championship winner at the PGA. Andrew Putnam, owning shares of him. Davis Riley, you heard that name last week. You're going to hear it starting more. Martin Laird, James Hahn, nobody's talking about. Own some shares of James Hahn. I did own a lot of Kyle Stanley, but I backed off it because it's Kyle Stanley. But gosh, he models that well. He's 4th in my model over the last 24. That's why, because he kills it ball striking on approach, terrible putter, but putting gets neutralized. But I still own him, but it was high. It was like 50% Kyle Stanley owned. I knocked it all the way down to 8, I think. Moved a lot of them to Hudson Swafford, one of my highest owned shares. 6,300. I love, ranked 6th in the model over the last 24. So what is it? That's 5th on approach over the last 24. He ranks 5th in ball striking, ranks 11th in green regulation gain, and ranks 23rd off the tee for a guy with very low ownership, single digits right now projected and that's 6,300. You can't ask for much better from a salary guy, from the guy in the sicko range, hashtag Blatant Golf. So give me all that Hudson Swafford. Again, not a great putter, but I'm not going to beat that dead horse. So those are guys I really like in that range belowhand. Again, not going to talk too much about the guys up top. Check back with the ownership on some key guys. So some key guys ownership I'm being mindful of is Finau, Billy Horschel, Aaron Wise, Russell Henley, and there's one other Ed, Taylor Gooch. Want to see what Mike has to say with that, what this maybe last update, if there is one. That's where I'm keeping a close watch on. But good luck, everybody. This is a big week. We got a good field. I'm expecting the Houston Open next week to have a good field too, and RSM usually doesn't. So we don't have much opportunities left to end the year strong. If you have some DFS goals, we got 3 tournaments left, and you haven't reached them yet. You got 3 tournaments left in 2021 to really get after it. So hope you can. Hope you do well. Good luck this week. Yeah, well, actually, there's one other thing strategy-wise I want to say. I said it last week on my show because of how spread out ownership was last week, that you didn't need to leave much salary on the table. This week, we might want to come back to the idea of just leaving some salary on the table. The highest I have is I left $1,000 on the table, so 1,000, so 1,000K. Some people leave more, but just if you heard that last week, come back to it. And I know I was talking to one of my buddies about Reed. Reed's picking up no steam this week. I really like Reed on like conditions. Obviously, this is not hindsight. I played a lot of Reed last week, but I like Reed in conditions like last week, where you're going to miss some greens because of the wind. So around the green is very, very important. And so that's another thing. I know I'm getting off subject, but I was hyping up around the green last week because when you're in the wind, your approach shots, it's hard to control your ball in the wind. And so, yeah, you're going to miss a lot of greens, but people are saying around the green is not important last week. Yeah, and a resort style course like this one too, if there's no wind, yeah, it's not important at all, but you get high winds. But anyway, we're not getting high winds this week. The greens are huge. So Reed doesn't need to rely on us around a green. You know, this is going to be a birdie fest. The winds are real low projected. It's going to be a birdie fest. And I don't think Reed has the offense right now to kind of compete. Yeah, I think he'll make the cut. He'll plot out there. He'll do what he has to do. But, well, I'm going to leave it all at that. Good luck, everybody. Win some money. Again, we only have a few tournaments left in the year to achieve our PGA DFS goals. So get cooking, do well, take care of yourself, and let's take it down on GPP, and let's keep in contact. If you need anything or have any questions or just want to sweat some golf, shoot me a Twitter. Gosh, I sounded like a dad there. Shoot me a DM on Twitter or at me, whatever. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you later, and good luck this week.